Jacinda Ardern.
Thank you, Mr Chair. It's my pleasure to take a call and speak in this general debate and endorse the comments that are being made by my colleagues around the importance of investing in our future. And we've focused a little bit with our education spokesperson on some of those issues today that I think is in stark contrast with the government members who have spoken primarily to issues around roading projects. Now, look, no one's going to argue that ensuring that our regions have decent infrastructure is important, but the government is basically replacing what they stripped away, basically replacing what they have taken away from some of those regional areas. But, Mr Speaker, I want to reflect a little bit on the other form of investment that we need for our future, and that is investing in our past. And that is the investment in, we seem to have forgotten that there's arts, culture and heritage as part of our policy area that I cover as well, Mr Speaker. Children, prisons, corrections, arts, culture and heritage. And heritage has become one of those issues that for the region of Canterbury has unfortunately been sidelined in recent times. Now look, obviously there have been a number of competing priorities for that region. First of which has been, rightly so, housing. But we have needed the government during that period to multitask in order to ensure that we have the retention of an integral part of Canterbury's tourism, their sense of place, and one of the things that has drawn so many to that city, which has been the Gothic revival style of architecture that exists in that place. And we know there are economic gains to revitalisation of our heritage areas. In fact, an expert on the economics of historic preservation from the United States came out to New Zealand not long ago and talked about the fact that for some of their Main Street programs, for every $18 of investment, every dollar of investment, they leveraged $18. So there is a spin-off to that kind of investment. And Mr Speaker, we've seen really good examples. The restoration of the old government building, the Heritage Hotel, that's a Category 1 building. The private owner worked collaboratively to ensure the restoration of that fantastic space. Contrast that with the loss of the beautiful, majestic building in Christchurch, which, as far as I can tell, was removed not primarily for safety reasons. It was demolished under Section 38 of the SERA Act because they had transport plans that meant a widening of the road and meant that that beautiful piece of infrastructure was removed. I think it's time, Mr Chair, that we listen to what was said in the Heritage Quarterly recently, where they said, quote, "Naturally, safety must be the primary concern, but we are at a point where the remaining buildings are not considered a significant risk or can be brought up to standard." Mr Chair, we have lost 47% of heritage buildings in Christchurch CBD. We're 3 years on and no longer are these buildings being removed solely because these are not buildings that fell down in the earthquake. Many of them are ones that have been demolished under the extraordinary powers that were granted to SERA at that time. But it is time that we reconsidered the way that we deal with heritage in that city. It's time we reconsidered those wartime powers. It's time that we actually had a plan for the heritage infrastructure of that region. Mr Speaker, Labor is focused on a revitalisation plan for Canterbury. We've talked about housing, we've talked about transport. Tomorrow morning we'll be talking about our thoughts on heritage for that city, how we can invest in the past in order to preserve something beautiful for our future. Heritage is not the domain of simply the last generation. Heritage is something that we need to keep focus on for the next generation so that we can build our sense of identity of place, whether it be in Canterbury, whether it be in our small provincial regions, whether it be in my city, Auckland, which has decimated so much of its historical features. So tomorrow, Mr Speaker, Labor looks forward to building a plan for heritage and preservation in Christchurch and look forward to showing our positive vision for that region.
I call the Honourable Member Chester Borrows.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I too get to my feet to say that it's good news.